Alrighty, so we finish up chapter 11 with another short video covering 11.5, right? Colloids, this last part of the chapter, kind of a subset to cover all the other types of solutions that we can get. Because we've touched on a lot, right, between all of the solutions and colligative properties in 11.4, right, talking about gases and liquids in 11.3, lots of types of solutions, but we're still left with some questions like, what is Jello, for example? Right, we've got that skit on The Office, but what exactly is it? Because it's, not a liquid in a liquid, it's not a solid in a liquid. What exactly is going on there? So we finished chapter 11 here in 11.5 by answering that question. That we're used to solutions like seawater, right? But what about mud? What about milk? What's going on with these things? So we get two new definitions to know from chapter 11 right here, colloid and suspension. A colloid is really similar to a solution, okay, except the particles that are within the solution are much larger than a normal molecule. We're typically dealing on things from 1 to 100, or sorry, 1 to 1,000 nanometers. They don't settle out, they just are larger particles. Okay, so it's a colloid, also known as a colloidal dispersion. Now, a suspension is a heterogeneous mixture. Okay, we've got particles that are suspended in solution, but given enough time, they will eventually settle out. And so you can kind of think about a colloid as being halfway between a solution and a suspension. Difference is colloids do not settle out, suspensions do. Okay. So milk, for example, with lactose and whatnot dissolved in there is an example of a colloid, right? Hopefully your milk doesn't settle out. That would be pretty nasty to get into the fridge and get that. Okay. So colloids do still have a solute and a solvent, but we refer to them by different names. Okay. Rather than a solute, we call it the dispersed phase. Okay, the particular component that's present in a minor amount. And rather than a solvent, when it's a colloid, we have a dispersion medium. Okay, the substance through which the particulate is dispersed. Okay, dispersed phase and dispersion medium for a colloid. Okay. I will ask you about colloids and suspensions. I will not ask you as much about this. Just if you see them on your homework or elsewhere, be aware that when you're dealing with a colloid, you have a little bit different vocabulary. If these things get made in some different ways, right? You can break down a larger particle into something small enough to be considered a colloid, or you can grow the colloid itself from something small to make those particles within the solution. Okay. One more vocab word to know is an emulsion. Okay, emulsions are something, it could be good or bad depending on your application. We'll deal with emulsions a lot in organic chemistry, but you deal with them all the time every time you wash your hands. Okay? Forms when two liquids are combined and one breaks down into colloid-sized droplets. Okay? We use something known as an emulsifying agent to stabilize an emulsion if it's desired, which is what's going on when you wash your hands or use soap. Okay? Soap itself is an emulsifying agent. Okay? It takes all the dirt and grime and everything else in your hands, right? And it doesn't matter what it is, right? We talked about like dissolves like in previous videos, but soap particles are amphiphilic. Okay? They like oil, they like water, and they can deal with things that are nonpolar, they can deal with things that have hydrogen bonding. They're these amphiphilic particles. They will surround the dirt and grime and everything else and form these micellar drops, an emulsified drop of oil here, and then those get washed away in water. So that's an example of forming an emulsion being a good thing, right? Get your hands clean. If you're cleaning up an oil spill, you have to be careful, right? You don't want to form an emulsion with the water. You want to remove the oil specifically. But let's get to the question we had at the beginning. What's a gel, right? What is Jello? Gels are subsets of colloids where we're dealing with extremely viscous materials. Okay? Specifically, the dispersing medium is a solid and the dispersed phase is a liquid. Okay, so thinking about the dispersed phase, right, that's the equivalent to a solute being a liquid, and the dispersing medium being equivalent to the solvent, right, is a solid. Kind of weird to think about. So it's kind of like a liquid dissolved in a solid. But more specifically, it's a 3D framework being solid, and liquid filling the holes in between. Yeah. And there's an example of what one of those frameworks would look like with liquid in between. Okay. And that's just one of various other types of solutions. Okay. We talked about gases and liquids here, liquids and liquids, and solids and liquids. But as I mentioned at the beginning of chapter 11, you can take any of these combinations, right, between solids, liquids, and gases, and combine the two of them. This isn't even talking about all of the solutions we covered in 11.4, right? But there are plenty of types of solutions that exist. Okay? A lot of the stuff here we didn't cover and we won't cover because we can't talk about everything over the course of a single semester. Right? But just have them on your radar that they do in fact exist. Okay. Big takeaway here from 11.5 is just the vocab words. Obviously, looking at chapter 11 as a whole, major emphasis on vocabulary, the 4 colligative properties, and Henry's law, knowing how to do those and what they represent. We will have more problems to cover any of those in the review session, of course. And if anything else comes up problem-wise, of course, we can talk about that on Blackboard, or make sure you contact me with any questions. That wraps up chapter 11. Nice little short video to finish everything off.